and welcome to Truth Trial, a show where you get to hear both sides of the issue and you get to form your own opinion. No brainwash, no bias, no rhetoric, just the truth. I'm Brooke Solis, and you're watching Truth Trial.
Let's take a look at our show lineup for tonight. Is Donald Trump right or wrong? Should we ban Muslims from entering the U.S.? Roger Stone, author of the New York Times bestseller, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, is a legendary political consultant who most recently has worked for Donald Trump. Author of The Clintons' War on Women, he is described by David Brooks in the New York Times as a dashing, colorful artist of the underhanded. Adam Kokesh is a popular, outspoken American talk show host, political activist, and author of the new best-selling book, Freedom.
Is Trump right or wrong? Should we temporarily suspend Muslim immigration?
I think our first duty is to protect the people who are U.S. citizens. There's no ethical or moral issue involved here because they do not have an inalterable right to come to this country. If you don't have a border, then you don't have a country.
But the religious aspect, that gets even more absurd. And my opinion here is that that's just silly.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
You're watching Truth Trial.
Hi, I'm Marcus Lloyd, and this is Truth Trial, where we put the important issues of the day on trial so you can decide the truth. Does it seem harder to wade through all that spin to figure out the truth? Well, you've heard of the court of public opinion, right? Well, this is it. Our question tonight, is Donald Trump right or wrong, and do we need a temporary ban on Muslims entering the country? Well, we have two debaters here to talk about the issue. So please welcome our first one, Roger Stone. Roger Stone is a political strategist and a New York Times best-selling author who has a new book out, The Clintons' War on Women. And his opponent today is Adam Kokesh, and he is a YouTuber, a political activist, and the author of the book Freedom. All right, Adam, so you get to go first. You have about 2 minutes to give your opening arguments. Then once you're finished, Roger, you will be able to respond with your opening arguments. And then we'll go into a umpired, if that's the right way to say, remarks between the both of you. We can do some follow-up questions and talk to each other and ask each other questions. Real debate for a good 5 minutes, right? And so it should be a lot of fun. So let's get this debate started. This is Truth Trial.
The idea of banning anyone from entering any particular geographic area based on government's edicts is absurd. The idea that we don't own ourselves, that we don't enjoy basic rights as human beings like freedom of movement, freedom of travel, freedom to decide where we live in the world is contrary to the basic concept of human rights, the basic concept of ethics. And what we've been scared into believing here in America is that we need to be afraid of the rest of the world, that people beyond our borders are somehow a threat to us. And yet the real threat is our very own government. Not only are we stolen from by cops more than burglars, we are terrorized more than by our own government more than people outside of our country. In fact, now for the average American, you're over 50 times more likely to be killed by a cop than by a terrorist. And the whole concept of banning people based on religion, based on something that's in their own minds, is a silly, futile policy where if someone wants to come into this country to do people harm, all they have to do is raise a hand and say, oh, I'm a Christian now, it's okay. And I can tell you this from my personal experience. I was in Fallujah in 2004 with the Marine Corps on a civil affairs team. We were making enemies faster than we could kill them. And if we had been bombing, if the American government had been bombing and terrorizing India for all this time instead of the Middle East, we'd be talking about Hindu terrorism instead of Islamic terrorism. You can't just drone strike weddings, kill children, and lay millions of lives to waste. In Fallujah right now, most children, I should say a large portion of the children born, are born with birth defects still from the depleted uranium poisoning. These aren't people who hate America or us because of our freedom or because of their religion. They want to do terrorism because the American government has terrorized them for years, and the way to stop that is not to put up more barriers, but to bring people together. Banning people based on religion is only going to make all these problems worse.
We're not here to debate American foreign policy and the effects. Anybody who knows and has read my books understands that I, too, am a critic of the Bush-Clinton policies that have given us the rise of ISIS. And, of course, Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, armed ISIS. But I am here to address the problem that we have today. There is a terrorist threat, and there is a force in the world that doesn't wish us well. We have 100,000 Syrian refugees who wish to come here. They are disproportionately young men. Where are the children? Where are the families? Where are the women? Secondarily, it is not unreasonable to assume that if 100,000 Syrian refugees want to come here, some subset of them are going to be terrorists. So Trump's proposal, to be very clear, a temporary ban on Muslim immigration until such time, if I can quote him directly, that our leaders can figure out what the hell's going on. If I can interpret that for you, what he means is until the time that we can have a system set up to vet and inspect those who would come here to determine their background and whether or not they pose a threat to the public safety. President Jimmy Carter banned Iranian immigration during the Iran hostage crisis. No one accused him of being a racist or a bigot. This is common sense. I believe in immigration. We are a country of immigrants. People who want to come here for a better life and for the promise of what America can be should be allowed to come here. But it is unrealistic, in fact, I think naive, to open our borders to anyone who wants to come here and believe that none of those people will do harm to Americans.
I don't really believe that the policy being temporary is even credible. I mean, it sounds like a temporary tax or a temporary bureaucracy. Obviously, the premise that we're going to, after we have this temporary policy in place, figure out a good way to screen out terrorists, well, when is that? When is that going to happen? How does that even happen? Are we going to, I mean, and if you can ask people, I mean, this is based on self-reporting, of course, you know, I'm a Muslim, and they can't just say, well, I'm a Christian and get in. Why don't we just ask them? I mean, if this premise is legitimate, that we can just ask people and know their true feelings, why don't we just ask them if they're terrorists? And then we can say, well, no terrorists can come into the United States.
I have a better idea.
The idea that this policy is enforceable in any way, that's unrealistic and naive.
Entirely enforceable. This is really simple. Why shouldn't the U.S. Immigration Service be allowed to look at the social media postings of those who've applied to come here? Today, that is not allowed. It would be illegal. It makes common sense to see if someone has said Ali Akbar, death to the Jews, on their Facebook page. I wouldn't want those people in the country, and the Immigration Service shouldn't either. It is entirely doable in the age of high technology to determine the background of those who would come here. The problem is those who say that something can't be done. Something most definitely can be done.
So would you say that if someone was a Muslim a year ago and then converted to Christianity and has been posting nothing but lovely Christian peaceful posts on their Facebook page, now they can come in? Is your system that you're proposing that easy to defeat, that as a terrorist, if I want to come into this country, all I have to do is get the government to believe that I believe something other than what I really do? I mean, that's absurd.
That's the system you have now. Essentially, people come in and we believe anything they say. No, if you've been funded by the Muslim Brotherhood, if you've been arrested for terrorist crimes elsewhere in the world, if you have been incarcerated in Guantanamo but released and now want to come to the United States, all those things can be learned. This isn't the Middle Ages. We are a highly technical society. All those things, I think, should be criteria that are looked at before we let people in the country.
This is a way for government to give you a false sense of security when it really can't guarantee any security at all for a problem that is created in the first place. You know, we have TSA to protect us from terrorists on airplanes because in airplanes you're in a large group of vulnerable people. So what do? We line up in crowds in front of TSA checkpoints to get groped and get that good false sense of security where we're standing in large groups where we're just as vulnerable. So this, again, it's a false sense of security that's another useless government program that can be easily gotten around. But even more importantly about the false sense of security, it's so easy to kill people. Human life is so very fragile, and we spend all of this time with these feudal policies and looking for a false sense of security, and it ends up creating more divisions and driving people away. Again, this is kind of like a pre-crime thing. You might commit a crime being a Muslim, not that you have intent to, that you've shown terroristic threats or anything like that. And I'm all for that. As on a private property basis, if I know that someone has been a violent person in the past, I'm not going to let them on my property. I'm all for that. But having the government on such a larger scale say, because of religion, something that's a figment of your imagination in your head, that's what's going to be the way that we protect ourselves. That's silly, that's futile, and the danger of that is it encourages people to turn to government to keep us safe, when obviously it's been causing the problem of terrorism in the first place. The CIA calls it blowback.
Well, realistically, of course, those who have applied would still have their opportunity to be examined. The point here is to just temporarily halt this until your system is set up to vet those who would come. We need a new system. Now, Adam, you don't believe in any government at all. I believe in smaller and less intrusive government, but this is a question of public safety. And I do think that it's a good idea to look at those who want to enter the country. This isn't bigotry or racism. This is common sense.
Well, if it's a question of public safety, the best thing we can do for public safety is eliminate all institutionalized violence. That's what government is. Now, I'm not against all government in that blanket sense. I'm for self-government. We should own ourselves. That should be respected. We should be able to control our lives and our property without any external force coming in and telling us how to live. When we accept government as a monopoly on protection, which it really is as a protection racket, you don't have an option. This is not a free market proposition. This is a gun to your head that says you will accept our services or you go to jail. I reject that. I'm for a higher standard of ethics. And that we can address terrorism without going to the pre-crime paradigm.
The police departments you refer to, the federal government you refer to, are formed by the government that we voted in. So let's not make it sound like they are self-appointed. Now, do they have excesses? Without question. In this
Well,
case,
you're the first to talk about stolen elections.
no, they're stolen. I've written a major piece on it in
Exactly.
The Hill this week. They most definitely can be, but at the local level, I'm not sure that happens that much.
Wonderful. Hey, I want to cut you guys off. This has been a great debate. Thank you very much. But we'll be back in just a minute after the break, and we'll hear the closing arguments from both. Well, welcome back to Truth Trial. This is the portion of our show where we hear closing arguments from our debaters, and we're going to start with Adam Kokesh, YouTuber, political activist, and of course the author of the book Freedom. Adam, go ahead.
Thank you. Now, in terms of Roger's position here, I do not doubt his sincerity. I do not doubt his desire to see a safer America and a more prosperous, peaceful world. However, I believe there's a great intellectual flaw in this argument as a proposition that if someone came to you with, well, this might not be good, this might not be the right thing, but it's temporary, we'll figure out the solution later, that should really make you suspicious about whether the people behind this policy have your best interests at heart. And when it comes to this particular policy, if we could figure out a better immigration policy, why don't we just institute that right now? What's going to change? Are the greatest minds of American policy incapable of coming up with this, that we have to create this feudal safety blanket that's going to make us feel like we've got this false sense of security because we've banned Muslims from coming into the country? Obviously, it should not give you any sense of security to know that no Muslims can get into the country, even if that was a policy that government was capable of enforcing, because you're, like I said, over 50 times more likely to be killed by a cop than by a terrorist. There is a better system than arbitrarily keeping people out based on their religion, or even if not arbitrarily, based on the general demographic trends of terrorism today. But to do it based on religion, where someone can simply raise their hand and say, well, I'm a Christian now, it's okay, or fake their online profile, or make a new Facebook profile. I mean, really, we're relying on Facebook for national security now? Is that what this fear-mongering government has come to proposing for us, that Facebook is going to save us from terrorism? Well, in a sense it will, because it wakes people up. Along with everything else on the internet, we have so many amazing opportunities to share new information that lets us see past these government scams and rackets and this false perspective of seeing the world as something to be afraid of. And one of the things that Roger pointed out about this government is that it was elected by the people, or that it was somehow justified because it has that popular support. Well, being popular obviously doesn't make something right. The fact that the American people support or rather out of ignorance allow the American government's foreign policy, which I do respect, Roger, that you are a great and credible critic of. I think what you're missing here is that there is this concept of blowback. And the people across the world who are inclined to terrorism, regardless of their religion, they don't hate us because we're free. Obviously, that's not really true anymore, if it ever was in this country. They hate us, if anything, because our government is hurting them and their people. So, you know, like I said, I know this from personal experience. I helped with the effort of imposing martial law on the country of Iraq. And you know that there are drone strikes that happen throughout the Middle East because Obama has ordered them. And I think this is still probably great progress, and you might agree, from widespread occupation where we're imposing martial law in these countries. But regardless, you're going to change people's religion to terrorism when you start terrorizing them. The greatest terrorists of the world are not the individuals who are upset with governments, but the governments themselves. Terrorism is using fear to control other people. And everything government does, whether it's this policy or taxation or regulation or driver's licenses, anything else, it's all backed up by the threat of force. That means you should be afraid that government is going to send men with guns to lock you in a cage if you don't do what you're told. Not only is that unethical, it's dangerous and contrary to the basic ideals of human rights, and it makes us less safe. So that's how we move forward as a species, again, towards a more free, prosperous, and harmonious society, is not by trying to judge people and limit their freedom based on the ideas in their heads, but respecting them as individual human beings. And if we could change the American government's policy to that, it wouldn't be creating so much terrorism in the first place.
Thank you very much, Adam. Roger, I'm sure you have some closing arguments, so we'll hear from Roger, who, of course, is a political strategist and a New York Times bestseller, and definitely has a new book out, The Clintons' War on Women. So,
Thank you.
stage.
Adam's right. We're not free. We're just the freest nation on the face of the earth. This democratic experiment is not ideal. It's just better than any other governmental system. You've praised the Founding Fathers because they rebelled against the Brits, but they gave us the form of government that we have, probably the most brilliant government ever devised by free men. Now, if one will examine the terrorist attacks in the last couple months, the Paris attack was caused by illegal immigrants who slipped seamlessly through the immigration system in France. This was also true of the San Bernardino killings. What kind of lessons do we need here? This is a dangerous world. We may have created some of this danger. That's a different debate, and I'd be happy to have it, but I'd need to be on the other side, because I think I agree with you. I opposed the Iraq War. I've opposed most of our policies. We shouldn't be nation building. That's not our job. But we are where we are today. The Obama administration has fostered ISIS. That's a fact. Trump's right about that. Hillary Clinton has armed them. He's right about that, too. And they don't wish us well. Therefore, it is not unrealistic to assume that some who wish to come here wish us harm. I don't want to see another San Bernardino. I had a friend killed in Orlando. These are personal issues, therefore, to me. Trump, I think, has come forward and asked for a halt, because it will take some reasonable time to set up a system that would allow us to investigate the backgrounds of those who would come here. By the way, under our current system, if someone is convicted of a crime abroad, they can't enter the country. So using the same criteria, if one has been funded or one has an affiliation or one has been involved in terrorist activities in other parts of the world, they shouldn't be allowed to come here. Not bigotry, not racism, common sense. Let's be clear, the two-party duopoly, the Republicans and Democrats, the elites at least, have given us our current system. They have failed us in the immigration area, as they have failed us when it comes to our foreign policy, which has created this problem to begin with, I would concede. They failed in terms of our fiscal policies, our trade policies. This is a Washington elite. It is not limited to one party, it's two parties. And in Donald Trump, I think you have someone who is an outsider, someone who is not connected to any of the failed policies of the last 30 years, someone who can look at each of these issues as he looks at immigration with a fresh eye, with a different approach, returning business sense, common sense to government. When the Founding Fathers determined our form of government, they envisioned part-time legislators, people who had a second profession, a cobbler, a lawyer, a doctor, whatever. Now we have career politicians who share one worldview. All you have to do is look at the mainstream media critique of Trump's proposal to see where our current establishment and those who like things the way they are on this issue. It's been near hysterical in the distortion of his view. It is not unrealistic or undoable to temporarily seal our borders from Muslim immigration until we have a reasonable and efficient system to determine who should be allowed to come here based on their background and their past activities and who should not. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. You guys gave us a nice, good look at the issues, and we thank you for coming on the show. That's all the time that we have. And now it's time for you, the viewer, to get involved. All you have to do is jump online and go to truthtrial.com or text the number on your screen and vote for who you think is right.
We'll be right back after these messages.
I feel great. No, it was a great exchange, and I mean, I don't think when you have the burden of proof, as Roger does in this debate, to say that we're going to institute a policy as opposed to we're not going to do that. I think you really failed to provide any kind of practical arguments for the legitimacy of that.
Yeah, Adam Kokesh is tough. I agree with everything he says if it were a perfect world. I mean, in the laboratory, he's absolutely right. It'd be great if we didn't need a government. It'd be great if we didn't have to seal our borders. It'd be great if we didn't have to evaluate each person who wants to come into the country and move here. Yeah. Unfortunately, we live in a very dangerous world. So without debating why terrorism has risen in the Middle Eastern region, because there is no question that the policies of the Clintons and the Bushes have given rise to ISIS and given rise, and that the Obama administration has armed ISIS, we're still faced with the reality of a terrorist movement across the country.
The idea of stopping someone from enjoying their freedom of movement, their self-ownership as a human being, that's unethical. The grounds that they're trying to propose in this policy, Trump and Roger Stone backing them up, I mean, that's just silly.
Remember not long ago we were told that Al-Qaeda was on the run. Now suddenly overnight we're facing a new terrorist threat. The answer is really simple, to seal our borders and then to set up a system, as Donald Trump would say, to vet and inspect anyone who would want to come here, particularly using modern techniques like looking at their social media postings. If someone has written provocative and hateful things and has made threats against any other group of people, I don't think they're a good match to come to America. We currently bar criminals from coming here. Why could we not bar terrorists if 100,000 Syrian refugees want to come here? Right. Sadly, some subset of them are indeed terrorists who don't wish us well.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back with another powerful debate.
Truth Trial. When you see Black Lives Matter shutting down highways and protesting against police, do you wonder if they're a hate group or a legitimate organization raising important questions about race? Conservative author Crystal Wright says they're a hate group, but Black Lives Matter activist Corey L. Hughes says the group was founded on love. Who do you believe?
I don't think it's a legitimate organization at all, and I don't think it should be recognized as such. I think it needs to be ignored.
The Black Lives Matter movement is not a violent movement. It's not a hate group. We don't hate cops. We hate injustice.
And you know what the black police chief said? He said this is a society problem, not a cop problem.
At the end of the day, as someone that we're paying you to protect us, the last thing we expect for you to do is kill us.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back with another powerful debate.
Tonight's show offers 2 guest debaters here on Truth Trial. Let's get started.
Our question tonight, is Black Lives Matter a hate group or an organization raising important questions about race in America? Joining us is Crystal Wright, author of Con Job: How Democrats Gave Us Crime, Sanctuary Cities, Abortion, Profiteering, and Racial Division. And she's also the editor of the blog Conservative Black Chick. And her opponent tonight is Corey L. Hughes, a social activist, proud father, and outspoken advocate for the Black Lives Matter movement. So we'll have Crystal go first and Corey will go second. And what'll happen is they'll have their 2-minute opening remarks followed by 2 minutes of the other person's opening remarks, followed by follow-up questions from both. So, are you ready to see the court of opinion in action? Here we go. This is Truth Trial.
President Barack Obama said the Black Lives Matter movement should be, quote, taken very seriously. Well, I would argue it's a directionless movement that we should be ignoring, frankly. Because if Black lives really mattered, how is it for 50 plus years, more than a half a century since the signing of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, Blacks are still demanding somebody fix these problems that are pervasive in our race? Poverty, out-of-control crime, and undereducation. So, you know what the Chicago police chief said, who's black, by the way, Eddie Johnson? He said the crime that's mostly black on black crime, blacks killing each other in Chicago, to the tune of 500 plus homicides right now. And it's going back to the days of the 1990s when cities across the country were just really jungles of crime that people didn't even want to go to, right? So you know what he said? This isn't a cop problem. My cops are out there in the neighborhoods protecting black lives. This is very much a society problem. And you know what Black Lives Matter refuses to acknowledge? That the real cause of all this chaos and carnage that's being heaped upon black people is the fact that 75% of babies are born out of wedlock to unmarried households. That's a recipe for poverty. Whether you're on the right or the left, Brookings or Heritage, they will tell you when a child is not born into a married household, their chances of growing up to a life in poverty and crime increases probably by about 70%. So like the police chief said, when you grow up in Chicago or any city and you see no way of hope, you're going to reach for a gun. Because you know why? Your black life doesn't matter too much.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
You're watching Truth Trial.
Does Black Lives Matter? I hear this as I travel across the country. People want to ask the question, is the Black Lives Matter movement a hate group? And I'll go on national TV right now and say, yeah, we are a hate group. We hate discrimination. We hate police brutality. We hate the fact that our children are growing up in schools that are underfunded. We hate that our children are reading books that are outdated. We hate that when the police pull us over, we don't know if we're going to get a citation or a death certificate. Is the Black Lives Matter a hate group? Absolutely. We hate inequality. We hate mass incarceration. We absolutely hate the war on drugs, who you understand now is really a war on black and brown people. We hate mass incarceration. We hate the fact that when our brown and black brothers are coming out of the penitentiary, that they don't have a place to go to because they've been earmarked now, they've been tagged as felons, and so they're supposed to be rehabilitated, but really they just been tagged. And so yeah, we are a hate group. We hate the fact that we have to stand up constantly and tell America that our lives matter. And what America will say was, what about black on black crime? Absolutely, black on black crime is an issue that needs to be addressed, and there are activist groups out there addressing that, but we cannot address that issue without addressing what causes that, and that is hopelessness. That is helplessness. That is feeling like nobody is listening and nobody is doing anything to help you. And so as President Barack Obama said, the Black Lives Matter movement is a movement that needs to not only be listened to, but people need to understand that this movement is not going anywhere.
So Corey said that Black Lives Matter is very much a hate group. You know, it hates the cops, it hates the mass incarceration, hates all these things that are being pounded on the shoulders of the black race. But I seem to think that the Black Lives Matter movement isn't hating the wrong things, right? Cops are just not out there going out, waking up in the morning and saying, hey, let me go kill some Negroes, let me go kill some black folks, right? Hunting them down. This is what people are saying on television. You know, I live in Washington, D.C. When I call 911, the cops are there. They are there helping people. Yes, black lives, protecting black lives. And the reality is, right here in Dallas, you know what happened? Who took those blue lives? Well, it was a raging armed black man who was seduced by social media to believe that he wanted to go out and kill some white cops. That's specifically what he said. Now, I'm not disagreeing with Corey that my brothers have been subjected to racial profiling. I too have been subjected to racial profiling while shopping in a store, having a security guard walk about like I was going to steal something. I think what Georgetown University is doing, my alma mater, making somewhat of a reparations, if you will, for the slaves they sold to make money for the university, I think that's a right thing, and I think that's a conversation we should have. That's a step in the right direction. And they're going to accept, if you're a descendant of one of the slaves that they sold, you get preferential treatment when you apply to Georgetown. I think this is a good thing, because we know racism has not gone away. A man named Barack Obama wasn't going to do anything to ever take that away. You can't erase over 200 years of slaves in this country. And again, I think we should have a conversation about reparations. However, the Black Lives Matter movement, you know, the things that Corey laid out, he never acknowledged why they are not marching in Chicago for people other than the young black man that was killed by the police officer. And we see time and time again, whether it's in Baltimore, where there was a mistrial and 3 acquittals for the cops who allegedly were charged with the wrongful death of Freddie Gray. Well, Marilyn Mosby, in order to placate the Black Lives Matter mob, she had to drop the remaining charges of the other 2 officers because the case wouldn't hold. We saw this with Michael Brown and Ferguson. We saw Trayvon Martin, same thing happened. The Attorney General, Eric Holder, said he was going to conduct an investigation to see whether Trayvon Martin's civil rights were violated. They weren't. There were no charges, additional charges filed against Zimmerman. And over again, we see Black Lives Matter movement coming up with preposterous demands and ignoring the black lives slain right now as I speak. And some of those crazy demands I want to tell you about. California State University, their group, gave a list of about 14 demands to the college president, and one of them was segregated housing. Black housing at an integrated university, what my parents sat in at lunch counters, and what my mom rode on the back of the school bus at 13 years old to and from ballet class, and had an older white man tell her to get up, and she was already sitting in the back of the bus. This is not progress. This is going backwards. Silly demands like wanting more political influence. That's what Black Ladders, there was a huge demands that the non-college groups gave, right? So there was this list of 6 demands about a month ago, and one of the demands, they want more political influence. A great way to have more political influence is stop voting lock, stock, and barrel for the Democrat Party, who has done nothing to fix all these pervasive problems. And I think another demand was the economic prosperity, right? You want economic power. Well, you know what? We have a black president. We had a black attorney general. We got 2 now, Loretta Lynch. I don't see black people being held back, but this goes back to the foundational bricks and mortar of what's causing all this genocide. And yes, there are some bad cops. Eric Garner in New York on Long Island was killed by one. But over and over again, you will never hear Corey talk about the problem of too many black Americans coming from broken homes where they don't have a mom and dad that they can go home to. And that is a recipe for disaster and death.
Thank you very much, Crystal. And now, Corey, it's your turn.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Crystal, for actually, giving me ammunition for this close. Because she said that Eric Garner was killed by a bad cop, but the interesting thing is that the bad cop that killed Eric Garner was acquitted, and he didn't go to jail. And so you're absolutely right. All cops are not bad. And I want to make sure that I take this opportunity to be responsible with this platform and tell the world that the Black Lives Matter movement, we're not cop haters. We have family and friends that are cops. We've got cousins and uncles and aunties that are cops. And so, no, we don't hate cops. What we hate is a cop that sees a bad cop and not say something. What we hate is when a good cop watches a bad cop do something wrong and they don't say anything because of this thing called the blue wall of silence. And so that is one of the issues that we want to take up, that people need to understand that sometimes the cops is almost like it's a fraternity. Right? When you watch somebody do something wrong and you won't say it. In the Freddie Gray case, they were all acquitted because the cops and the DAs and the attorneys and the prosecutors, all of them are connected. And so how do you expect for them to prosecute one of their own? These are the issues that we're talking about. And so now we're not just talking about police brutality, but we're talking about the way the system deals with African Americans, the way the system, when you're talking about private prisons, and it goes on and on and on and on. And so, again, I want America to understand this, that as a black man living in this country that's been extremely successful, I know that there are opportunities. I know that doors have been opened up. But the reality is I'm the exception and not the rule. Usually if I take this suit off, if I take my tie off and you see my tattoos and maybe I'm playing certain music, unfortunately America sees me as a threat. When a cop pulls me over, he doesn't know that I have a master's degree. He doesn't know that I live in a $500,000 home, but he sees a black man playing Lil Wayne and he automatically becomes fearful, and that is part of the fundamental problem in this country. I don't care whether my mom or my dad were together, right? There's plenty of people that from a white America or a Latin America that didn't have both mom and dad there, and we understand that that's an issue, but if we want to talk about that issue, let's go back 20 or 30 years and talk about the war on drugs. And why so many black babies are being born in this country without their fathers, because the government put drugs into our communities and then arrested those that use the drugs, right? But that doesn't happen usually in white America, because if I get caught with drugs, I go to the penitentiary, but Tommy goes to rehab. That's a problem in this country. And those on the right, they want to talk about, well, why are you guys blindly voting for the Democratic Party? Did you see the Republican convention this year? How many black people did you see at the convention? What is the Republican Party doing to attract the vote of the African American? Oh, that's right. Donald Trump said, what do we have to lose? Well, we've been losing a lot. We've been losing a whole lot lately. And it's time for us to stop losing. And one of the ways we can stop losing is, instead of you deflecting and talking about black on black crime and talking about fatherless parents, let's talk about what we can do. Let's sit at the table together and figure out what we can do to fix this and get this right. The fact that I have to yell Black Lives Matter is an issue. I know what it is. You would feel more comfortable if I said Black Lives Matter too, because that makes you feel comfortable. Well, you understand that's what we're saying. But what we're saying is, listen, do you see us? We bleed just like you bleed. We love just like you love. Can you treat us the way you would treat your own son or your own daughter? And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey, and thank you, Crystal. This has been a fun debate. I hope you guys enjoyed it at home. If you did, this is the time where you get to say something about it. You get to go to truthtrial.com or text the number on your screen and decide who you thought did the best job and vote for what you think is the best argument.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Go to truthtrial.com or text the number on your screen to vote for the winner of the debate. You're watching Truth Trial.
Anybody that debates the Black Lives Matter movement will always debate black on black crime. They'll always debate why we're not doing X, Y, Z, but they never stop and listen and say, well, before I try to deflect, let me just listen and see if there's some truth to what this person is saying.
If you want to stop the system that he thinks is massively incarcerating black Americans, then let's go to the foundation where that all starts. And again, that's why doesn't he want to have a conversation about the black family, about promoting black marriage, right? I just don't see it. I don't know how, are we supposed to not lock people up, So, I mean, if you're black or white and you commit a crime, you need to go to prison.
Example, she brought it up, and it was probably the worst thing for her to do was bring up Chicago, because I'm from Southside Chicago, and you understand that Laquan McDonald was a kid that was killed on camera. Several cops watched it. 18 shots went into this kid's body, and they covered it up. They covered it up for a year. Now, that's what I call a blue wall of silence.
It's not the cops doing the killing, like the Chicago police chief said. The cops are putting themselves in harm's way protecting black people. I challenge everybody. Let's have the cops retreat from inner city neighborhoods for 24 hours. You see who's getting killed.
That's all the time we have. Go to truthtrial.com or text the number on your screen to vote for the winner of the debate. Tune in next time for the results of the poll and for the next episode of Truth Trial.